fact that we're about to have some better times in the world in general. So, but we got certain people in office that don't believe in climate change. So I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about how things are going to get better, because I do have a question related to that. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I told him that you were going to be on the show, and that we've got like some messages of peace that are about to come on the scene. Some that might already be here, from what I understand from hearing from some of your publicists and people of that nature. But one of the things that you talked about, that's moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. And when I mentioned that to a friend of mine, they were like, wait a minute. Did we already have the age of Aquarius? Because they were thinking about like all them 60s songs that were about the age of Aquarius. And I'm like, I don't know. I'll ask Mr. Larson how we can have the age of Aquarius in the 60s and how the real age of Aquarius is now, because we were both a little confused.
Yeah. Well, ages are a very long time. Now, when we talk about an age, let me just explain how we get to an age, if you don't mind. Our solar system, our sun, and all the planets don't sit still in cosmos. They move in an elliptical orbit, which goes around. It's actually within the circle of the 12 constellations that we call the zodiac. And as we move in this elliptical orbit, it takes 26,000 years to make one orbit. Our planet, which is what we're concerned about, our planet Earth, as we move around, comes closer to one of the constellations than any of the others. So we come into alignment with that constellation. Now, these constellations are huge, and they have tremendous energies, and so our planet becomes subject to the energies of that constellation. And when we're in alignment with one of these constellations, we say we are in the age of whatever that constellation is. Now, the scientists call this the precession of the equinox. If you go up to an observatory and talk to an astronomer, he will call it the precession of the equinox, but it's the same thing. So for the last 2,000 years, we've been in alignment with and in the age of Pisces, the great constellation Pisces. And so now we're moving away from Pisces and towards the great constellation Aquarius. And so in 1625, we started moving out of the influence of Pisces and its energies, and then in 1675, we started entering into the proximity of Aquarius and started receiving its energies. So an age is about 2,250 years. They're not equally spaced apart, the constellations. So there's a little bit of difference, 2,150, 2,500 years. So we are moving away from Pisces and into Aquarius. That's what the song in the 60s was about, was the fact that we are moving into the age of Aquarius now. And the place that we're at right now, Dean, is that we're kind of in the middle of both. So we're still receiving energies from Pisces, but they're getting weaker. And we're getting energies from Aquarius, but they're getting stronger. And whenever you're in the middle like that and you're receiving both energies, what you have on the planet is chaos. And that's exactly what's going on now. We've got the old Piscean energies, the individuality is one of the main qualities of Piscean energies. And now we're trying to move into Aquarius, which is about cooperation and synthesis. So now the individuals have to join in with others and cooperate. And that's the process that we're trying to go through right now. So these little dictators, these powerful individuals, their time is over. They don't know it yet, but their time is over, because now it's going to be the age of the people. The ordinary people on the planet are going to run the world. And if our elected officials don't do what we want them to do, we'll throw them out, and we'll get other ones. And you're going to see that. You already saw it happening in the 2018 election. You're going to see it happen more in future elections as well, where the people, Dean, you said earlier, nobody listens to me. Well, that's exactly one of the big problems with our government, is they're not listening to us. Too many of them aren't listening. We're going to throw those guys out and gals out. And we're going to have people that are willing to represent us and that care about what we have to say. So this is a very, very big time in the history of humanity. We're moving out of one age and into another age, and there's going to be big changes, and it's all going to be good. That's my information. Now, if I may, just one thing before we go on. I usually say at the outset of interviews, I want your listeners to know two things. Number one, please don't believe anything I say, because that would be blind belief, and I can't recommend blind belief to anybody. I'm not here to convince you guys that what I say is true or to argue with anybody. I'm just here to give out my information, and if 10 or 20 or 30% of it makes sense to people, I'll be thrilled with that. I'll tell you, your listeners better fasten their seatbelts, because they're going to hear stuff they've never heard before, and I think it's all positive and it's all good. The second thing I'd like them to know, people ask, where do you get your information? Well, I'll tell you. I get it from a man named Benjamin Creme, spelled C-R-E-M-E, who lived in London up until a couple of years ago. He died a couple of years ago at age 92. But for 40 years, he traveled the world without any pay, giving out the information we're going to be talking about today. And I'm one of the volunteers that has agreed to help keep that information going out into the world to help people get a sense of hope. So he wrote about 14 books. They're on Amazon.com. I'm not here to sell books, but if people are curious and want to see what else he has to say, the books are on Amazon.com. He's the latest revealer of something called the Ageless Wisdom Teachings. The Ageless Wisdom is an ancient philosophy, not a religion. And it's a philosophy as old as humanity. And you know that old saying, more shall be revealed. That's what's been happening over the ages. Alice Bailey wrote a bunch of books in the 1930s and 40s. She was the most recent revealer of revelation of what's to come for humanity and about why we're all here on the planet in the first place. So that's where I get my information.
Wow, sounds very fascinating. Now, you just brought up the fact that the meek shall inherit the earth. So I remember that being like an old saying that people heard a lot if they ever went to Sunday school or any kind of religious kind of background. And it sounds like what you're saying is that we're actually moving into an era where that's going to actually be a truism as opposed to something that a lot of folks don't find necessarily true to this day. Because right now it seems like you just said that a lot of times it's the powerful and the elite. I know we had that whole thing with the Occupy movement where people were complaining about the fact that it was like about 10% that was controlling over 90%. But you're saying that we're about to flip that and that the 90% will actually be in control and that the 10% better watch out.
That's exactly right. Now, it'll be a process. It won't happen overnight. It'll be a process, but it's a process that's in force right now. It's happening. I mean, you think about all those people that marched in the streets, they saved our health care. That was humanity, and I mean, they woke up all the senators and representatives. They had to listen. They were camped out at their office. You know, those people saved our health care. So now the future is about Aquarian energy supporting groups in action. Marching in the streets is very powerful, very powerful. One of the most powerful things we can do right now. But as we work in groups, we get Aquarian energy behind us, and it will support us in getting what we want. And that's exactly what's starting to happen.
So we're starting to see more and more people starting to work towards group dynamics and things of that nature. So it sounds to me like, you know, there's this whole conversation going on now about, like I'm thinking about Miss Alexandria Cortez and everything, but it seems like, and even Bernie Sanders, the people were pushing toward a more, for lack of a better term, socialistic kind of government or democratic socialism. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is that might play more in line with what you're talking about than the true capitalism.
Absolutely. Capitalism serves the wealthy, not the poor, not the middle class. Democratic socialism or social democracy, same thing. That's where we're going. That's where we're headed. Now, people say, oh, socialism is like communism. No, it's not. Not at all. Communism is about a dictatorship. It's about a few people ruling a whole country. And socialism is not about that. Socialism is actually about justice, about everybody getting their piece of the pie. If you look at America right now, we're full of socialism, and people don't even realize it. The whole library system is paid for by taxes. It's socialism. The military, paid for by taxes. It's socialistic in nature. The Veterans Administration, socialistic in nature. Medicare, socialistic in nature. Social Security, socialistic in nature. We've got the police, the firemen. They're all paid for by tax. That's all socialistic. We have so much socialism in our government right now, and it's used to serve the people. And that's exactly where we're going to continue to go. You know, the government's job is to create that safety net. So nobody goes without food, nobody goes without housing, nobody goes without health care, nobody goes without defense. You know, that's the government's job. The people's job is to rule themselves and to contribute with each other and work together so that everybody has what they need. Everybody won't have what they want, but everybody will have what they need. And if you want more than what you need, then you just go out and work for it and get some money and get it. You know, but it's not about money. You know, money's God right now. And, I mean, just try doing anything. Try going to court without money. Try and do anything without money, and you're not going to have much success. Well, we've lost touch with the real God. We've lost touch with the real God, and it's one of the crises of humanity right now is our complacency, our indifference to the suffering of others. And this complacency and forgetting who we are has affected every aspect of our life. You know, every aspect of life can be spiritual. Politics can be spiritual. Religion is spiritual. Healthcare can be spiritual. Social life can be spiritual. Financial life. Money is a great spiritual tool if it's used wisely. Education can be spiritual. Business can be spiritual. All of it. There's spirituality in every aspect of life. And we have lost sight of that. You know, we have forgotten that we're not humans having spiritual experiences. We're spirits having a human experience. And once we get back in touch with that, and there are people coming to teach us this, to remind us who we really are, once we remember that we're spirits, we can start to live like spirits. We can start to let that part of us control our lives more and more and more.
So it sounds like part of what you're saying is that the whole concept of, which became very popular, and I'm not a big fan of it, and I don't think Dean is either, but there was a time that prosperity ministry was very popular, but it sounds to me like you're saying that is on the way out because more people, even in their religious experience, they want something that's going to be about the greater good and not necessarily about the good of the individuals in control.
What is on its way out? I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't quite catch it.
Prosperity ministries, which were very popular back in the last 10 to 15 years. It sounds like, according to what you're saying, that...
Yeah, I would agree 100%. The ministry, see, the churches are losing their members worldwide. I mean, people are just dropping out of church. You know, I grew up in a church. I was going to be a preacher, and you know, and then I got into life in college, and it just kind of swept me away. But I grew up in the Christian community, and I, you know, taught a lot of Bible study in churches and so on that I attended, but the churches are losing people because they're not current. They're not addressing people's current needs. They need to wake up. They need to get in touch with the people just like our government does. And so that's going to start happening, but the wealth, no, it's not. Right now the goal is to make $1 million or $1 billion or be a millionaire or you know, the one with the most toys when they die wins, you know, that kind of thing. Well, that's going to go by the wayside, and what we're going to start doing is taking care of each other. We're going to start taking better care of each other. You know, one of the things I learned from the ageless wisdom that my religion couldn't teach me or didn't teach me was the nature of the soul. The nature of the soul is to serve. And so when we finally do wake up and get in touch with our soul, realize that we are a living soul, living spirit, we start looking for ways to serve. We start looking for ways to help other people. Maybe it's through donations to charities that we like or whatever. But that's where humanity's going. We're going into an era where we're going to be serving each other, working with each other, and taking care of each other. You know, if a family of 4 only has enough food for 3, they don't decide which one they're going to starve to death. They parse the food out so everybody gets some of it. That's what's in the future for humanity.
So it sounds to me like, and I guess Brexit is part of this as well, that we're even moving in an age where things are going to change politically as well. I mean, I remember there was a time that we used to say that there would only be 2 parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, and that a third party person could never be elected, or there would never be a third-party candidate that could actually have some viability. But if I'm hearing you correctly, and that things are changing in the nature of the way that we're going in terms of politics and just society in general, there is a possibility that, say, in the next, maybe not this